All right, well, we'll get started because, like I said, an hour is not enough. So we're just going to get your appetite wet for self-publishing and let you know some of the basic things that we need to do. Again, my name is Sonia Hollins. This is my husband, Sean Hollins. We run Season Press. And Season is S-E-A is Sean's first three letters, and S-O-N are my first three letters. So Season Press was created from that. Sean has been doing graphic design for over 20 years. So he's the person who makes everybody look good once the book gets edited and all the other things that we go through. So I help with the first part, and then he makes everybody look good. We also do Community Voices magazine, which you'll see on the tables there, and we have highlighted some of our authors in some of those as well. So we'll get started. The next slide. So we're all here today because we either want to write a book, or we've written one, or we want to do another one. And what does success look like? So if we're in our mind saying, okay, I want to be an author, what does that look like to me? Am I packing out 1,000-seat stadiums, doing presentations? What does that look like? What is your goal? And I want to say, I tell people, look at what you want it to end like before you start. Because sometimes when you start, you're kind of figuring your things out and you don't think about the whole big picture. So think about the big picture and where you want to end, and then that'll help you get to where you need to go. So, and another thing is, like working with the authors, we start off smiling, but then sometimes we're not smiling by midstream, but we're doing it because we really want your product to be the best, because it reflects Sean and I. So if someone gets out there and it's like, who did that? We want it to reflect us as well. So we're like the doctors that help push the baby out. We want to make sure we look good as well. So we're just as committed to making sure your product looks good than you are. Now you all have a packet on your desk there, and we're going to go through the 10 steps here. So that first step, we're talking about, what does success look like to you? So as you envision yourself as an author, and you want to know, where you want this to go, you have to see yourself there. Once you see yourself there, then we can start working on the product to make sure it gets to where you want it to go, because we have to go by your vision. We can't just sit there and make it up for you. We have to get some energy and feedback and find out where you want to go with it. So think about what does success look like to you? Is it money? You want a lot of money? You want to be able to travel the world? You want to be able to leave your job, break away from that ball and chain or something? What do you want from that? And that pushes you to get your end product. Okay. Now, what's your point? So when you look at that, the first step, what is your point of your book? So write down, if you have it in mind, if you don't, what is the title of your book? Write down the title, because that helps you get started. Then you want to write down the genre of your book. Is it fiction? Is it nonfiction? Is it history? Is it a children's book? Is it religious? What is your genre? Because that's going to help you decide what your market is. So if you don't know who you're selling it to, that's a big problem, because you're not going to know how to get it written and figure out how you're going to market it to them. So what area? Is it fantasy? Is it erotica? Is it romance? What is that genre that you're going for? And then think about your audience. So who is your audience? Who are you going to push to buy this? Are there people who need your services for something? Or is it a self-help book? Is it a cookbook? Is it just entertainment? Are they learning something from you? Who is your audience? Because as you're writing, you want to keep that in mind. Who am I writing for? You can't just say I'm writing for everybody, because everybody's not going to buy it. Who are you going to target? And those are people we need to target to buy your book. So Raymond's book focuses on a minister who's a humble minister at first, and he sees this life of these mega preachers are making all this money, and he's like, I want that life too. And he starts compromising for it. And what happens at the end is, I'm not going to tell the end. But so his market is the Christian market. And, so he goes after goes to churches and does book signings and things like that. Jessica's book, Rose, is a children's book. And Jessica's being humble. She's not telling a lot of stuff about her book. But Jessica started this 8 years ago. And she started it as making little cutouts. They are all actual little cutout pictures that she brought to us in a binder. And she said, Sean, how do I get this in book form? And so Sean scanned the photos in. We went over the text. And we put. So what you have to say to yourself, what qualifies me to write this book? Jessica had a love for art. Raymond is a deacon in the church, so he has some interesting stories he wove in, into there. There could be some real people. We don't know. You got to read it to find out if you can find out who these people are. But what qualifies you to write your story? What gives you that validation? So when people look at the back of that book cover and they see your name there and your credentials, they say, okay, that's why they're qualified to write that book. And think about your sales. Like I said, if we get this pretty book finished and it just sits on a shelf and nobody buys it, what was the point of it? So project that to yourself. I want to make $5,000 my first month. I want to make my money back that I gave to Sean and Sonia, back within a few months. What is your goal? What do you want to make? Because we're here to sell books. We're here to make money. Now we did have one author who came to us, and Jim Ford. I don't know if Jim showed up tonight, but Jim Ford is a local attorney, and his family, all 5 generations of the men in his family, wrote memoirs. And so when his dad passed away, he was given all of these papers, and he said, what do I do with this? And so we helped him put it in book form, and he just wanted to give it to his family for Christmas. So everyone would have the photos that were in the boxes, and all their family memoirs were there. And so when he finished it, he did hardcovers for all his family for Christmas, and we did a wraparound book that covered it like this. But once he got it out, we said, this has a lot of history in it. A lot of Michigan history. One of his ancestors was one of the first settlers in Michigan. So he talked about Native Americans being on the land as they were trying to settle the land. And that is interesting Michigan history. So a lot of libraries ended up buying his book. So his point was just to do it for the family, but because it has so much interesting history in it, a lot of libraries bought that as well. And people who are interested in writing memoirs bought his book. So think about what qualifies you. You may trip up on an audience that you didn't even expect to catch. Is it an event, a historical event that you lived through? Are you introducing a new fiction book on the market? Is it a family history like Jim's was? Are you combining stories together, maybe short stories of family memories that are all coming together into a book that may be inspirational to other people? So, think about that. Define yourself and where you're going. So that's the first step. Okay, the next thing is, we talk about why are you qualified to tell it? Are you experts? We went through that. Now, we're all here because we're talking about self-publishing. But if you weren't into self-publishing, you may think, well, I'll just sell my book to Random House or some big publishing company. So what's the difference? What would Random House do for you? First of all, you would have to get it to them if they even accept unsolicited manuscripts, because sometimes they don't even accept them unless you're an agent who gives them to a publishing company. So if it happens to make it into the door and they screen it, they will edit it for you if they accept it, help you develop your concept. They may give you an advance based on what they think your sales would be. They'll present the legal contracts needed for you, set up deadlines. They'll help with your marketing, distribution, public relations. Then if you need an illustrator or designer, they'll help do that as well. They'll work with your rights to your stories. So a lot of times when you go through a publishing company, they may own the first rights to your book. So they have an agreement to own your book for so long before they make their money back. So if someone comes along and wants to make a movie out of Reverend Height and you're under contract with your publisher, the publisher has first rights to that movie, and you may come in underneath if you made sure your contract was right and you even have rights to anything else. Because some people sign all their rights away. And then they control your interview. So if I say, can I interview for Community Voices? They're like, oh, my publisher says I can't talk to anybody unless you're, USA Today or People or something. They control who you talk to. They even can control your future products. And sometimes you get paid as little as 20 cents per book, that's sold. 20 cents is pretty good if you get that, if you're going through a major publishing company. And then they don't even guarantee if they even sell your books. They're, what's her name? She did Waiting to Exhale. She's from Michigan. Terry McMillan. She wrote the book Mama, and her publishing company didn't even push it at all. They just set it there. And so she had to start going around buying her own copies of the books and making her own book signings and setting up her own things because they didn't even push her book. They didn't feel that there was a market for it. So sometimes your book can get into the hands of a publisher and it just sits there. Here are some authors that we all know of who were rejected. Dr. Seuss was rejected 28 times for his book And to Think That I Saw It on Mulberry Street. 28 times they rejected his book. Mary Higgins Clark was rejected 41 times over 6 years until she sold her first short story. Danielle Steele sold her first book, then had 5 more rejections before selling her second. So, these are, some real life stories that you go through a publisher, everybody doesn't have the same excitement and vision that you have for your book. So now what? We didn't go through the publisher. We don't want to deal with all the rejection, hundreds of rejections. So now what do? So now we're going to self-publish. And that's what we're talking about. What is your market? Who do you want to reach? And when you start writing your book, the most important thing that I can tell you before it even gets to us is don't just write it and then come to us and say, here's the book. At least have some other eyes look at it before it even gets to us. Because you may think it's fine, but there are other people who will catch things that you didn't even catch. Or they may say, you know, what happened to that character? You started off and then they just disappeared. You know, so make sure that you've had at least a few eyes go over it and do your spell check, do all the things you can before it even gets to us, because that takes up the time in editing as well. Target your market. Uh-oh, I got a word missing there. Okay, editor, edit your work. Okay, then what you do as a self-publisher, you also get your copyright, your ISBN number, which is the little code that goes on the back to sell it. And you set up your own speaking tours and book signings. All the things that you need, you have to set those things up yourself as a self-published author. And like they were saying, it's not just about writing it. Once you get it written, how do you get it sold? Okay. So focus in on your mission and purpose, what we talked about before, and determine your budget, because your budget could be, Sonia, I only have $500. What can we do with this? Well, we have done projects for people who just had that because they had everything together. It was a poetry book. Did we bring that one? I don't know if you know Pamela Brown Goodacre. She's a township supervisor. And she had poems that she had written, for years, and she just wanted to put it in book format. She's like, the book, it's already done. I just need it in book format. So we designed a cover, got her on Amazon, and she was ready to go. There was not much you can do to poetry, because I can't tell you how your creativity should go in poetry. Just a few things we went over of how to put them in order and categorize them and that type of thing, but she didn't have a big budget, so we kept within her budget. Some people have a lot of money, or they say, do what you need to do and make it happen, and we've had that happen before. So make sure you know what your budget is, because you may have to get another editor. You may have to pay us to do some extra editing. So think about what your budget is as you're doing that. The layout and design. So when Sean gets to the layout and design part, if you want this elaborate designs and chapter headings and all this fancy stuff, that's going to take some time too. So think about how much money and time you need to put into that. Scanning. If you have a lot of photos, like Jim had a lot of photos, so we had to scan those because he had just brought us a box of photos. We had to scan those and take the time to get those in to make sure they were right for the book, for production. Some people scan photos in at home and then we get them and the resolution's bad, and that's not good. Sean was able to actually fix a few of the historic photos too, pieces were missing or people's faces were off, to fix those too. So think about if you need some of that scanning. Printing, photography, if you need a author photo, you really want a nice author photo, because that can make the difference between looking self-published and looking professional as well. If you have a picture that you took in your backyard with your kids and it's like, okay, who took that? It doesn't, unless your book is about being in the backyard with kids, it's not gonna really grab people. So make sure you have a nice professional photograph on your book cover as well. Now Jessica did a fun picture with hers. With her dog Milo. So she has her dog Milo in there with her. And then Raymond, we took one of Raymond's too. Looks nice and professional there. Looks all serious. So, you want to think about that. People pick up that book, you're the face that they're seeing. What are they going to see when they see that, see your book? So think about your photography, your professional photograph, what's going to show people who you are for your book. Okay, so think about your budget. That's important, because that's going to really dictate how much we can do and how much you're willing to pay for us to do. So, think about that. Mm-hmm. And we have a lot of people who come to us with a concept for a book cover, and we totally shoot it down, because we're like, if you want this book to sell, we're not not saying anything about their idea, but we want you to sell this book. So we're trying to help you out. That's basically, this author, I love her, Stella Davis. She's a local minister in town. She wanted to have her picture on the cover. And she's a lovely woman, but the focus of her book is Shut Mouth Grace, which talks about the importance of being quiet sometimes. So we felt, wouldn't this tell more of a story than your picture? Because when you look at someone, you might have, well, she's an older woman, maybe that doesn't relate to me. But if you just have a face with a smile, it makes someone say, what is that about? That might be interesting, and they'll pick it up. So sometimes people come to us with concepts, and we'll try to talk you out of it. The book that's there, Esther, Greater Purpose, she did not like that cover at all. She went around and around and around. And the same with this one. Sharon Davis, she came to town a few months ago. She wrote a book called A Safe Place to Talk About Race, based on some of her radio show interviews about different diverse topics. Well, when we first met her, we said it'd be great to have you on the cover because that's what's on your radio show, your website. This is your brand. Oh no, I don't want my face on the cover. We did like 10 different covers for her. She wanted trees in the forest and peace and serenity. And after about 10 covers, we ended up coming back to that one. So sometimes we know a little bit about what we're talking about, you know, and we can't make you do it, but we want you to sell your book. That's the whole point. We want you to sell your book.
Do you charge by the hour then, or by?
We have a package where we'll discuss that. And at the same time, if you go around and around beyond that package time, that's when your hours can start adding up. Now, when we start, I'm going to give you a little background on us, of why we're qualified to do this. I wrote a book back in 2003 when I worked at the Battle Creek Inquirer called Here I Stand. Show them the first. Isn't that beautiful? Isn't that a beautiful book? We were so excited about that book.
When we created it, I mean, it was like, that is nice. I mean, we wanted everybody else to feel the same way that we felt about it.
Right.
It's great out here about your bookshelf.
Right. On my bookshelf only.
Yep, exactly. What happened, we ended up going to a book signing or a book project in Ohio.
Right.
And she had her book sitting on the counter, and it was next to books like this. And we're like, okay, put that down. And we literally like laid it back down like,
right.
Okay, it does not match up.
Mm-hmm.
So we actually compel our authors to actually go to the bookstore, go to Barnes & Noble,
Mm-hmm.
look at some books, look at some ideas.
Mm-hmm.
After we did that, we created a second edition,
Mm-hmm.
which was a lot more shelf appeal.
Right.
And that was the purpose. Now people aren't saying, okay, yeah, that's nice. It actually fits. Some of the layout in this, it was our first project.
Mm-hmm.
We wanted to get it done. And margins of everything just blown out the water. We just had to be done. There was no margins. But it was a way to actually get our feet wet. We got a project underneath us, and then we start fine-tuning it. So she'll get into fine-tuning your project,
right.
getting the second, third editions.
Right, and people start coming to us after even when they saw the first one, oh, could you help me publish? And we were so embarrassed after that first book fair we went to that I kind of backed off of it for like a year or so. And then we came back and revisited. And one thing we learned too, speaking of budget, if you're cheap, you're gonna get what you pay for. Because we went to get these priced to make them soft cover, and we went to a place and and all the pages started falling out because that's what we could afford. And people started returning their books because the pages were falling out. So then that's when we decided to go hardcover, and we added a hardcover edition. And it made it more appealing to libraries as well. It was more stable. So we've learned a lot as we've gone too. So we're not just talking like we experts for no reason. We've gone through the process of a lot of different things. And we're talking about following steps in writing. When you first write, I think, can you click it again? Is it? No? Okay. When you first write, okay, it's on your form here. Your first draft is basically what you get out. Okay, I'm writing this book. I'm on my typewriter. I'm getting it out. That's just the first draft. People come to me with that. And they say, here's my book. And they haven't looked at it again. They're just, this is it. This is perfect. And I'm like, nope, that's your first draft. You're like, but I can't see changing anything. That's the first draft. You go back through it again, read it again, look at it again, and you'll catch things that you didn't even see the first time. Have other people look at it. Then come back with your second draft, and then I will look at it, and when I edit it, I give it back to you. That's the third draft. Once you get the third draft, then you go back and fix or make the changes that we suggested, and you bring it back again for the fourth draft. That's when we get to people. Deb is one of our readers. We have different people who are far away from the project because I've been too close, you've been too close, We need someone who's totally separated from it, who can pick up things that we didn't even catch. So we have an outside reader look it over and catch things like, was that supposed to be were or was? We missed that. You know, so things like that we're able to catch in that next draft. Then we come and we get you a final proof in the actual book form that it's going to look like on Amazon when people buy it. We'll look at it again and we'll go over it and make sure we haven't missed anything. And if we're satisfied with it, we push the button and it's ready for sale within 24 hours. If not, we'll fix it and we can re-upload it again. The good thing about Amazon, we do CreateSpace Amazon, is that if you want to add something or change something later, all you have to do is upload a new file and put it back in the cloud. And within 24 hours, all the changes are there again. So when we first did ours, we printed hundreds of books that we had to buy, and then the pages fell out. So it's a much better system today to say, okay, I'm just going to get 50 for my book signing, or I'll get 25, and it's better to get them and sell out, you know, than to have to go the old-fashioned route that we had to buy hundreds of books, and then we were trying to push them. Now I wanted to bring them to give them to people for free. I said to Sean, should I just bring them and give them to people for free today? Because we have so many books, because we had to buy them in a big bulk to get a discount. But it's not like that anymore, so that's a good thing. So think about your drafts and your writing, and devise a look for your brand. So you're not just selling a book, you're selling you. So when people see you at your book signing table, what is it going to represent? This is an example of a pull-up banner for an exhibit that I have that Sean created. So when we have the exhibit and people see this, and it matches the books, the bookmarks, and everything that go out, it's a brand. Everything matches. So think about when you're doing your projects, what else are you going to need? We had, there's some things up there. So there's business cards. So you may want business cards that match your book. You can pass that around. And then you can look on the back, how it has a description of the book on the back. Lois Richmond just wrote the book, the Gargoyle, the Missing Gargoyle from Ladies Library. She did a hardcover and a softcover edition. She did a postcard that went out to people to let them know about the event, and then we created a press release. So think about your whole marketing plan and your brand. What is it going to look like? What are people going to see and recognize you as a professional? You don't want to have a book with one look and business cards that you made on Vistaprint that's totally different than what your book looks like. You don't want to have a poster you print off at home that looks totally different than what your book looks like. You want everything to have that brand. We even advise people to, you know, if you want to get a T-shirt with your book, you know, your name on it, or something that when you're going to book signing events that you represent yourself. And your book will be judged by its cover. So that's what we're talking about, judging a book by its cover. Sometimes we just do covers for people, and they have their own ways that they want to get everything else done. So Sean developed this cover for Pastor Scott Galilee, and he wrote a book called You Need a Faith Lift. And Sean said, it would be fun if you and your wife got in doctor's outfits like you were doing surgery. And so he created that, took the picture of it. So it made people think and say, wow, that looks interesting. Let me look at that. So people do judge your book. They judge your book and they want to, you know, they look at it from there. This is a book we did on the Kentucky Raid. There was a woman in Grand Valley who wrote a book on the history of the Kentucky Raid in Cassopolis. And people really like it who are historians because it has historic photo, it has historic documents and things like that. So think about your audience and what will they like? What will they pick up on those type of things? This book was made by a woman in, where is she, in Vandalia? Ruth Andrews. And she grew up with a story called Fatty and the Ogre. It was a folk tale. And she's an artist, so she recreated the story and did her own art. So her market are artists. She has the original prints up when she does her events. So that's her market, are artists and you know, people who are into the folklore and the storytelling festivals. That's her market. So think about who your market is and who's going to be judging that book. This is a book we did for the Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity at Western Michigan University. They were founded, I think it was 50 years ago, and we did this book for their 50th anniversary. And they came to me with a book title of, was it The Way We Were? The Way We Were. And it's like, okay, what is that about? And they had a picture of an old record that they liked when they were in college. And I was like, okay. So I got into the book and helped them do some research and found out that their fraternity, actually some of the members, founding members, met Martin Luther King Jr. at Albion College. I said, that would be awesome to put that on the cover of the book, because he's a historic figure. It's going to grab people's attention because they know who he is. And he was an Alpha as well. So we ended up putting that picture on the cover, and we put the original guys who were in the fraternity on the back. So it was a way for them to have a memorial booklet to say, wow, these were some of our original founders. We have this there. And it sold during homecoming weekend. They had it for sale, and there was a play that Von Washington did based on the book for the guys that weekend. And so people bought the book based on the play. So that's what we're going to talk about later, how to do other things to promote your book. But think about the cover, and that people are going to judge your book by the cover. Okay, we were talking about having your baby. Your book is your baby. Once it gets out in the world, everybody thinks their baby is the most beautiful baby in the world. And, you know, sometimes we look and say, okay, so now your baby's out. How are you going to dress your baby up? What are you going to put on your baby? What's your baby going to wear? So think about some strategies on how to get your book out there to make it look good to people. Think about setting up at art fairs or book fairs. Sometimes you can say, oh, for $25 or for free, you can get a booth and sit there, you know, at this table. Think about ways to get out there. And a lot of people send their books, once they're done and published, they send them to a big publisher to see if they will, you know, republish them and buy the rights to them. People do that all the time. A web page. Raymond talked about having his own website. That way you can send people right to your website. And they're not just going to Amazon looking for you. They're actually saying, oh, go to RaymondRyan.com. And then from there, you can click on it and go right to Amazon and buy his book right from his site. Social media. Jessica mentioned social media as well. Use your Facebook friends. Use people who you know, converse with, and they share it, and they let other people know about what you're doing. So think about how to get your baby out there once you have it out there to show everybody. Submit proposals to organizations. There may be clients who need your book. Christina McGrinson is a local teacher in town, and her son was actually killed over 30 years ago. And she came to me to help me, if I can help her write a story, so I can help her write a story about the death of her son. And I've been a reporter for over 25 years, so I've heard and seen and covered a lot of different stories. So when I met with her, I sat there and heard her story about how her husband had actually killed her son. And she found out later that he had bipolar issues or something, but they didn't know that before that. And I said, I can help you with your story. And I got in the car and I just bawled. I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to get through this, this story with her. And it was very touching. It had a lot of information and details on it. But I didn't think that information was for kids. I said, if this book is going to be for kids, we have to soften it up a little. You know, grief is a hard thing for kids, for adults to understand, let alone kids. So we had to work with the language a little bit on that to soften it up. But her market, she's able to go to grief programs that deal with youth. She can go to organizations that, you know, talk with kids about if someone in their school was killed or died. This book is a way to get in there in schools. Buy the book for the kids to help them get through the process. Through this little boy, her son's friend, Brad, was wondering, how do I remember my friend once he's gone? You know, how do you keep that memory of them alive without it being a grief-stricken, you know, event? And on top of that, since she is from Panama, she did it as a bilingual book. So she has Spanish and English. So think about, you know, that as well. We also can help if you want to get it in Braille or in a different language or, you know, audio books. So think about, you know, what organizations or events can you wrap your book around? If you're writing about how to sell a house on the real estate market, what kind of real estate events are going on? How can you get your book to those different places? So you're selling your book to the world here. And now you sold your first book and you have your book signing event. So the marketing, let me see, where did we, did your brand. So number 6 was the marketing. We're talking about that, how to get your book out. What we did with a few of our authors is they paid for me to do a press release. So as soon as the book was released, I sent that press release out to dozens and dozens of media just to see if anybody picked up on it. And a few people have gotten their stories in newspaper articles. And particularly if you have a book event scheduled, that's a really good time to do it, because we'll say, you know, she's going to be at, you know, Western Michigan University bookstore, you know, March 1st. And so then media can pick up on that and run that as well. So think about when you're doing when your book gets completed, What are some ways that we can start selling it and pushing it and getting that media coverage?
Something I had no idea about.
And we'll work with that. I'm supposed to work with you on that too. Thanks for reminding me. But yeah, we do that. And sometimes it's as simple as saying who, what, when, where, why, how. Who is your name? What did you do? You released the book. What's the title? When is it being released? Or when is the book signing? Where is it going to be? You know, and a little bit of background about yourself. And a nice photograph that they can put in there of yourself and of your book. That's basically, I used to work at a newspaper for over 25 years. Don't call me and say I have a book and you want me to just take my time out and write this article and I don't have anything in front of me. That's not going to happen because there's murders going on here and you want me to write about your book. No, I don't have time for that. So if you ever notice in the newspaper that some people always get in the news, they're always in the news because they know how to write those press releases. Some organizations are constantly in the newspaper because they know how to write those press releases. What's going to grab someone's attention to say this is an important story? You know, Lois's story about the gargoyle at the Women's Library, the Ladies' Library is a historic building. It's the third oldest women's organization in the country. This was the first building in Michigan built by women, owned by women. That's a big historical fact. And now she has this cute story about the gargoyle that really ended up missing. Someone stole it. And then it came back mysteriously. No one knew who took it. It just popped back up a year later. So she created this nice little story out of it. It has a historic, aspect to it. So people want that local history portion of it. Museums, the Arts Institute, people want that. So that's what I'm saying. Think about who your audience is going to be and who you're selling it to, even as you're writing it. So does anyone have any questions at this point? I know I'm going through a lot. Because you have to think about that. Depending on, what size your book is and how much it ends up costing, how much money do you want to make? Do you want to double? Do you want to double what you're making? Do you want to triple? And look at your market. Can your market afford? Will your readers be able to afford what you're asking? Are you doing it to make money, or are you doing it just to get something out there? Maybe for the first book, where you really, maybe breaking even, doing a little bit more. So when your second book comes out, people know you, they trust you. Then you can charge a little bit more. Maybe do some things that way. But we always give you those numbers as we get toward the end, so you'll know, how many pages you're at, how much this is going to cost. Do you want us to push it and make more pages? Do you want to do some stuff and make it smaller so we can, so think about those type of things when you're doing it. Being creative, again, we're saying go to conferences and speak. Be a guest at a book club. Raymond has an event coming up. We'll push it again, another commercial, on Tuesday where he's talking about his book here at the library. So what can you do to have a discussion about your book and bring people in to talk about it? I know the Southwest Michigan Black Heritage Society brought her as part of their racial healing program. Her first book signing, she sold 400 books at one event. Wow. One event, and what she did was that she has 10 different interviews in here, and she actually had one of the people that she interviewed come to the conference that she was speaking at via Skype. So that was a way to bring in some of the people, and everybody who paid for the conference got a book included with, the conference. So she added that in, like, oh, you get this free book autographed, so she had a way of marketing to where people come like, wow, I get a free book, and she's just, adding it on to the conference fee. And they don't know her book may have just cost $2 and they're getting this nice book. They're thinking, wow, I'll get this book. But she's making money because she's drawing it in as part of a conference. And people want something. Everybody wants to get something. And there may be a book club. There may be a book club around town, and you say, can you guys read my book as part of your book club? I can come and talk to you about it. And we can have discussion. I'll give you guys a discount, for buying the book in more than one book or copy. Write for trade magazines. The book that I'm working on next is about this woman, Murs Tate, and I wrote an article that was in Michigan History Magazine about her that was just in a few months ago. And that's a good way. People are calling me, asking me for the book. They're like, when is the book coming out? So think about, writing for magazines. What is your audience? Are they balloonists? Are they, flyers? What is your book about? And how can you find magazines that target those people and get them to want to buy your book? So think about those type of things as your marketing. Speakers bureaus. There are people who are looking for someone who talks about, global warming. This is one of our authors wrote a book about global warming. There are people who want to hear about that. So he can have his book there and be a guest speaker as part of that. There are local TV shows that you can get on, a Lori Moore show or whatever. Get out there and find a way to get your book talked about. E-books, someone mentioned that before. It's easy nowadays to just click a button and turn your book into an e-format. Audio, Braille, multi-language formats. I don't know if you want to talk about some things that might be happening with your book past the book process, or I won't. Never mind, I'll make you wait. But that, do some other things with your book. Make a workbook out of it. There may be something where you can, this book is about Here I Stand, about the musical history of musicians in African American history. I could easily make a workbook out of this and take it into the schools and teach kids about, African American history in Battle Creek and some of the things that happened there. Okay, there's a workbook a church did. He designed it for a church based on one of their classes. So take a book and make a workbook out of it. Make a second edition like I did here to save my face. I did a special anniversary edition to give it a different look and a different appeal. And the thing about this book, when we first brought it out, we had a big, gigantic concert in Battle Creek, a free concert at W.K. Kellogg Arena Auditorium to publicize the book, and we had musicians from Motown come in and perform, and all the people from. So it was we sold a lot of books. We sold a lot of them, and we were happy about it until we went to that other book event, and it was like, okay. So look at here. I love my husband; he's awesome. But look at his margins. There were no margins there. There was we were getting as many words on the page as we could possibly get. It's like, what's the book count? Okay, let's squeeze it all in there. So we really squalled some stuff in there, and we jeopardized the look of some of the photographs in there because we were putting so many words on the page that people were overwhelmed with the words. And so we went through it and made that a little better. So think about events that you can use. I did a lot of presentations during Black History Month for my books about musical history in Battle Creek. Maybe turn it into a stage play, do some things like that. So when you're all done with all this, you can sit back and fly to Aruba or wherever and live off the fat of all your money that you earn from your book. So that's what you do. Now, coming through us, when you first say you want to come on with us, we have an application or contract where we talk about what we offer. We don't own any rights to anything you do. We don't keep any of your materials. Raymond gave me his little papers, and I gave them right back to him at the end, here's all your stuff. So we don't own anything. We don't keep anything. We don't control your website. We don't control your Amazon site. We push you out the door, and on to the next one. So we have a contract that we sign. This is one of our modification forms that we develop. So when you go through that final editing stage, and you look through it, we have a form where you'll say, okay, on Sonia, on page 6, it says, in fact, this is one of the, but I wanted to say, this is, in fact, one of the. So this is a form that we give you online to fill out, and you will go page by page, paragraph, so we'll know exactly where those changes need to be made. That's something we learned later, as we were learning different things as we go. I think, we had to go through books and erase stuff, and what page are you on? Okay, what page is that? So we made this form to kind of help make that a little easier for everybody. And I think that's about it. What time is it? Is it 6 o'clock? Oh Lord, we'll have to say, okay, I try to stick it in an hour. But that's the basics of it. We can always come in. You can come to our office. We're right off Gibson Street, right by the golf course, Kings Highway, in the Trinity Warehouse Complex. We have an office in there. So you can always come in there. It's 841 Gibson, and it's right in between Pitcher Street and Kings Highway. It's like a little...
If you know where Arco Containers is, our office is in the complex of Arco, Trinity Warehouse.
Right, and I gave you the cards there too, so you can always call me if you have any questions, and